All right, guys. So I wanted to do a quick video. Or I guess it's probably not going to be quick, but I did want to do a video on the practice test and just make sure that everybody knows what we're doing on these problems. I know you have a key, and I know you have access to that on Google Classroom, but I know some kids wanted some extra practice. So I figured I could upload a video of me going over all of these and you could watch it and be just like me going over it in class. So hopefully that is the case. So we'll try it and we'll see what happens. All right, so the practice test. I did have some people try to tell me it wasn't similar to the real test. Guys, we literally copied and pasted, not like we copy and pasted. No, like I physically copied it and pasted it. You can actually tell that when you look at number 6 because it asks about the Cincinnati. Let's see. Oh, let me scoot up so you can see number 6. It asks about the Cincinnati lemur cage, which was from the actual test. So like that is like an obvious hint. We just copied and pasted. So we copy and pasted. The only difference is the first 5 questions on the real test are a spiral review of 8th grade material. And on top of that, we made this multiple choice on the real test. It's not multiple choice on the practice test. So those are the only literal differences. And then obviously we've changed the numbers because I'm not going to give you the answers ahead of time because then I'm not testing your knowledge. I am testing whether or not you know how to copy, and that's not what I'm looking for. So, okay. So let's just go ahead and actually jump on into the math. Okay. So, the Tyler Zoo must have 92 bamboo trees planted in the koala enclosure when there is 1 koala present. For each additional koala, the number of trees must increase by 23. So we're going to, this is all we need for the first couple of questions. I'm going to kind of divvy this up. Something that may help you, you don't necessarily have to do this, but if it helps you, it's a good idea to kind of mark what's important. So we have 92 trees for 1 koala. We can see that in the table. And then for each additional koala, it must increase by 23. So we are going to add 23 bamboo trees in each column here. So let me grab my calculator. Could we do this by hand? Yes, but it's also just as easy to do it with a calculator. So let's do that. So we are going to do 92 plus 23. And there should be 115 trees for 2 koalas. For 3 koalas, 138. For 4 koalas, 161. Okay, so question 1, complete the table for the Tyler Zoo. We are done. Okay. And if we continue to read the problem up here, it says the zookeeper started a table of the number of trees based on the number of koalas, so we've got that. Cincinnati Zoo must also have a certain number of trees planted based on how many koalas live in the enclosure. For each koala, the number of trees must increase by 35. So if there's no koalas, no trees. 1 koala, 35. 2 koalas, 70. So we are increasing by 35. Okay, so number 2 says identify the common difference for the total number of trees at the Tyler Zoo. So what did I increase by to get from one number to the next? Well, we added 23 each time. So to get from the number of trees from 1 koala to 2 koalas to 3 koalas, we increased by 23. That is our common difference. Number 3, write a sequence. We are just writing all of our numbers of trees in a list with commas and an ellipsis at the end, which an ellipsis, if you remember, that's that dot, dot, dot. So we start with 92, 115, 138, 161, and we know as the number of koalas increase, so do the number of trees, so we're going to continue our list here, or by this. All right, number 4, writing the expression. I know this is like a big one that people struggle with. Like a lot of people hate this question. So let's think about it. What are you increasing by each time? Every time I add a koala, the number of trees increases by 23. So I'm doing plus 23, plus 23, plus 23. Another name for repeated addition is multiplication. So whatever you are increasing by, that is your multiplier. So we're going to multiply something by 23. Now let's talk about what we start with. And the number we start with in our column or in our table is 92. So I'm going to put 92 here plus 23 times n. So the first thing I want you to see is right here. It says hint. Use your table to check your expression. So how do I do that? Because a lot of people on the test wanted to ask me, hey, is this right? And I can't tell you whether or not it's right or wrong. So what you can do is you can use your table. You should never, in math, you should never have to ask me if something is right, because there should always be a way to check. Actually, you know what, let me scratch that. 9 times out of 10, there's a way to check. Sometimes we might need a verification, but a lot of things, there's a way to check it in math. So I'm going to check to see if this is right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to look, and I'm going to plug in 1, and if my expression is correct, when I simplify it, I should get 92. Man, I just realized y'all can't even see what I've written so far. Okay. So I'm going to plug 1 in here. If this is correct, I should get 92. So let's try it. So 92 plus 23, and then for n, I'm going to just choose 1. So 23 times 1 is 23, and 92 plus 23 is equal to 115. So hold up. When I plugged in 1, I should have gotten 92, but I didn't. I got 115. So this is not right. I am 23 more than I should be. So what I can do is, if I were to plug in 2, I would want 115. If I were to plug in 3, I would want 138. But what's happening is when I plug in 2, I'm getting 138. When I plug in 1, I'm getting 115. So to correct that, what I can do is make this an n minus 1. Because what that's going to do is it's going to take me back 1. So if I try this, so let's scratch this out. If I do this, let's do 92 plus 23 times, I'm going to plug 1 in for n, but I've got this minus 1, so I'm going to do minus 1. Okay. Sorry about that, guys. So I'm going to do 92 plus 1 minus 1 is 0, so we have 23 times 0. 23 times 0 is 0, so I'm just left with 92. So this expression is correct. So right here. So you should not have to ask me, Miss Gallant, is this right? Miss Gallant, is this right? Just plug in and you tell me. And that way you know whether or not it's right or wrong. If something's not coming out right, then you know to adjust it. And if you know to adjust it, do that so that you get full credit. All right. Let's go on to number 5. Number 5, use your expression for the Tyler koala enclosure, that's a mouthful, to find the total number of trees that must be present if the Tyler Zoo had 15 koalas in their enclosure. So 92 plus 23 times 15 minus 1. All we're doing is taking this 15 and replacing the n. So 92 plus 23 times 14. Okay? So let's take care of this. clear this out. We're going to do 23 times 14, which is 322. So I got 92 plus 322. And that gives me 414 trees. Okay. All right, so let's do number 6. We're going to do the exact same thing we did in number 4. But we're going to go for the Cincinnati Zoo. So if I look, this should be the easiest one because I'm just increasing by 35. So again, we just said that if I'm adding something over and over again, my common difference is the same thing as my multiplier. So I'm doing 35 times n. Again, I can check it to see if it's right. 35 times 0 is 0. 35 times 1 is 1. 35 times 2 is 2. 35 times 0 is 0. 35 times 1 is 35. 35 times 2 is 70. I am starting to lose my mind a little bit. Sorry, guys. So 35n should be correct. So let me talk to you about what you're going to see on the test, though. Your test is going to be set up similar to this one. So when I have one koala, I have 35 trees. So we're going to write it just like we wrote this one. So we'll have 35 trees plus my number of trees increases by 35. And we want to take care of the fact that we're not starting at 0, we're starting at 1, so we'll do that. So how is it that this and this could both be correct? Well, what I can do, I'm going to box this because this is one of the ways you're going to see it on the unit test. But what you can do to check that this is right, let me simplify this real quick. So I've got 35 plus 35n minus 35. Well, what happens with that 35 and negative 35? Well, they cancel out and you're left with just 35n, which is the exact same thing as that right there. Okay, so if you need to pause the video and look at anything or run back, now would be a good time to do so because I am swapping over to page 2. Okay, number 7. This is easily the highest point question on the test. This is one a lot of people struggle with. So we set this up just like an EOC LEAP 2025 question. There are 3 things this question asks you to do. And if you are missing any of those 3 things, you will lose points. So the first thing it asks us to do is write an equation. Second thing it asks us to do is solve the equation. And then the third thing it says is to interpret the solution. If you extend your tables and just get the solution, it does not count for anything on the EOC or LEAP. It doesn't care what the right answer is, it cares how you got the answer. So we have to be really, really careful about making sure that we answer the question as it's being asked. So the first thing it says is write an equation to represent the point at which the number of trees at the Tyler Zoo koala enclosure is equal to the number of trees at the Cincinnati Zoo. So I want to know when the Tyler Zoo is equal to the Cincinnati Zoo. We wrote 2 expressions. We wrote one for the Tyler Zoo, and that was the 92 plus 23 times n minus 1. We also wrote one for the Cincinnati Zoo, which I'm just going to leave it as 35n. And I want to know when these 2 things are equal. So all I'm going to do is set them equal to each other. If you write this, that's like a third of your points right there. It's just writing that. We've done the very first thing it asks us to do, so that's some points right there. All right, so the next thing it asks us to do is solve it. All right, so solving this one, I would start by distributing this 23 and getting rid of the parentheses. If I do that, I'm left with this 92 plus 23n minus 23 equals 35n. Okay, so I'm going to start simplifying this. I can combine the 92 and the negative 23, and if I do that, let's see, we should get, see, 92 minus 23, 69. So I have 23n plus 69 equals 35n. Okay, so there's a couple of things we can do at this point, but what I would personally do next, I don't like having an n on either side of my equal sign. You would, ideally what you want, or not even ideally, what you want is to have only one set of n's. So you would like to either have the n on the left or the n on the right. So I'm going to take this 23n and subtract it. And what's going to happen is 23n minus 23n cancels. And so we have 69 on the left side, just 69, equals, let's see, 35 minus 23 is 12 n. Okay? All right. So then I'm going to divide both sides by 12 so that I get n by itself. And I'm going to get that n is equal to 5.75. All right, so we've solved it. So the next thing is that we need to interpret our solution. This is where I saw most people not get points, is they forgot to interpret their solution. So what I think we should do here is think about what our problem is asking us for. They want to know at how many, like when we have, it wants to know when these two zoos have the same number of trees. So n, if we think about it, n represents the number of koalas. So at 5.75 koalas, we would have the same number of trees. But does that necessarily make sense? Like, can you have 5 3/4 of a koala? I know some of you are going to argue with me and say, yeah, it could just be missing a leg, or it could just be missing an arm. Let's think about this. Just because it's missing a leg does not mean it's not a whole koala. I mean, I don't know. So we could argue back and forth about some of this all day. But it doesn't really make sense to have 5 75/100ths of a koala. It just doesn't make sense. So what we can say is that I guess technically they wouldn't have an equal number of trees because you could either have 5 koalas or 6 koalas. And that means you would either have one number of trees or a different number of trees. So, but we could say, guess for clarity or for simple purposes, we could say the number of trees would be equal between 5 and 6 koalas. I think that's basically the best way to interpret this. On the actual test and on the second chance test, I think it's a little more specific, and I think it should end up in a whole number. Don't quote me because I don't remember very well. I know on the real test it was a whole number. I believe it will be on the second chance test as well. So let's just, this I think is going to be the best way to interpret this. Okay. Number 8. Assume there are 10 koalas. Which zoo would provide the enclosure with the most bamboo trees? So we could do, why don't we do this? Why don't we take the Tyler Zoo, we put a T by it, and plug in 10. Okay, and then why don't we also take the Cincinnati Zoo, and we'll plug in 10 here as well. So we have 92 plus 23 times 9. Get my calculator out. Sorry, my calculator is also my cell phone, so if texts pop up, I apologize for anything my family members might say. Okay, so when I simplify this, I get 299 koalas. This side, 35 times 10, anything times 10 is easy, that is 350 koalas. So the zoo with the most bamboo trees for 10 koalas would be the Cincinnati Zoo. Gosh, I hope I spelled that right. I don't spell, guys. That's why I teach math. Okay, so I'm going to take a break right here. It's about a 20-minute video, and this is just the first 8 questions. So I'm going to take a break for a minute, and then I'll come back and do another video. Thank you so much for your attention, and feel free to shoot me or Miss Means any questions if you have them. All right, thanks, guys.